We women do not sacrifice too much for love. We choose love. We are no longer living in a Jane Austen novel. We are in the 21st century. I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm particularly thrilled to be here on the second ever debate that only has women debating together. I wanted us to take this moment to dwell on this historic moment because I love a little bit of history and I want you to join me in celebrating this moment. And I'll take you to somebody who is very special to me, Lady Hale. If you don't know her, she's known as the Beyoncé of the legal profession. She was the first woman to become the highest ranking judge in this country and the first woman to sit in the Supreme Court. And she wasn't always the first, and she said when she joined Chambers as a budding pupil barrister, I was the second woman in the barristers' chambers that I joined, and I shall forever be grateful to the first because she welcomed me with open arms. I'm extremely grateful to those who demanded to be members in this union 60 years ago and made it. I am grateful to those first women who stood here and had an all-women debate. And I am grateful to you, the House, and everybody here for welcoming me with open arms tonight, I hope. I'd like to start by telling you that I grew up in communist Romania. I didn't share these Prince Charming stories that we heard before. It may be simply because we only had 2 hours of television a day and all of the Disney cartoons were illegal pirate copies. Maybe the film was broken for us. Contrary to what you may think about communism and my upbringing, that was a society where men and women, at work at least, were equals. They worked the same sorts of hours, had the same chances for promotions, and shared the same parenting responsibilities. And there was no question about what our future as children looked like. But under these repressive conditions of our political landscape, my father found himself having only managed to study 4 years of education before the Second World War broke for him and interrupted it. There came the chance of adult education. And this was the opportunity of a lifetime for him because he was a very intelligent man and he was offered the chance to progress through adult education to high school. And beyond, if you wanted, to university. Now, it may be sounding to you quite passé, but in this context, it was a true rarity and a chance to aspire to something greater, something that can truly elevate his status, to carve a career suited to his talents for himself. What do you think he did? Well, he turned it down. Or you may say, he sacrificed the opportunity. I'm not telling you this because I want to make a point about men who have to make the sacrifice as women do, because that is not true. I tell you this because I want to illustrate the difference between having to sacrifice for love and choosing love. By the time this offer arrived for him, he was father to 3 daughters, all under 10 years old. My father felt that taking the opportunity at a time when he was raising us would mean less time with his children and less time with his wife. And he chose his family. He chose his legacy. He chose love. Was it worth it? Well, I'll come to that later. For now, I just want to review the motion. I know we heard that we shouldn't be spending too much time on the words, but words are important. And you will not be surprised I'll be asking you to read it because it is important before you cast a vote that you know exactly what you vote for or against. But I am a lawyer. And as all lawyers, I am trained to dissect every word in a sentence, to derive and challenge its invisible implications. I find the proposition gives rise to a lot of questions. There are many big words in it. Love, sacrifice, women. What can be deemed to qualify as sacrifice? Is it autonomy? Is it our careers? Is it our bodies, our passions? Is it the love of being single? Is it all of the above? Then there are the filler words. Have to. Too much. And as my colleague said earlier, do women have to sacrifice? Or maybe, as we've heard before, are they being sacrificed? How much is too much? What is the benchmark we measure against? How do you, or indeed any one of you, or anyone else, know when you've sacrificed too much? Let's rather focus on love. I agree with the proposition on the other side on that front. And after all, I think love is important because it is also the love debate tonight, so I think love should win overall. In the end, I think the motion really is asking two questions. Do we have to sacrifice for love, or do we choose love? And the second question is it worth it? My argument tonight will be that love is a choice, and that, yes, it is worth it. So let's focus on the first part of that question that I think the proposition is asking us to address. We women do not sacrifice too much for love. We choose love. We are no longer living in a Jane Austen novel. We are in the 21st century. The very fact that I'm here tonight, speaking to you with my daughter in the audience, is demonstration enough of the fact that I have control, I have agency, and I make educated and calculated choices. My Oxford graduate husband is happy I'm here tonight. If he were displeased, I would be here nonetheless. Our love is built on mutual respect. I am a campaigner, an activist for women's rights, as we've heard. I champion women lawyers, and I champion everything that has been achieved to today. And I think that historic timeline is the context that requires you to apply to any vote you take tonight. You cannot ignore the past to take a decision on the present. I've been an activist, particularly in the workplace, and especially in the corporate world, where progress has been slow, but it's come late. Remember, women could not be lawyers before 1919. That is 105 years ago, so not a long time. I've dedicated my professional life to helping women in law, as you've heard, balance their careers with the family lives they want to lead in ways that are pragmatic. My company, Obelisk Support, was the first of its kind to help women in law work in ways that work for them, that suit their lifestyle. We've had a significant impact on their lives and on reshaping the legal sector. We couldn't have done it without the actions of trailblazing women rights activists like Lady Hale, I mentioned before, but also many before her. Women who compromise more dreams and aspirations than you or I will ever have to. In fact, you're hearing me say this only because we live in a society that makes it possible for us to not sacrifice too much for love. And while I remain a steadfast activist, acutely aware of the challenges that still exist, we have more agency today than we've ever had before. We have more control of our lives than we've ever had before. At the age of 4, my daughter, going through my makeup, announced she had to look like Snow White. She obviously didn't watch the pirate film. And she said, I just have to. Even further evidence, I think, to me, although I know have to is part of tonight's proposition, that she, even at that age, had agency. But I do think women are beyond secretly exploring their mother's makeup drawers, and we should respect them for going further than that. I worry that rather than embracing the opportunities in front of us that have been hard-fought, we are squandering the chances, isolating ourselves, and opening the door to a future of loneliness. Which brings me to the second part of the argument. The question is love worth it? And my answer is yes. As the mother of a newly minted teenager, I am concerned about a generation that faces the looming threat of self-servitude and dooming itself to a future of loneliness and isolation, a life lived behind a screen. And women are becoming a kind of science fiction novel character to be seen but not touched. A recent Forbes article citing a Cigna study reports, and I quote, young people aged 16 to 24 feel more lonely than any other age group, including people over 65. Indeed, 73% of Gen Z report feeling alone sometimes or always, and that loneliness can be as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. And people who experience social isolation have a 32% higher risk of early death. Conversely, it is well established that marriage is overall good for your physical health, and I say overall because I recognize there are bad marriages and bad partnerships, and which sacrifices are not reciprocated, where negotiations do not take place, and where one side is typically less than happy than the other. Nevertheless, another study I found involving middle-aged women over a 13-year period found that women in good marriages were less likely to develop risk factors that led to cardiovascular diseases. And I'm quoting a study from an American Psychology Association article. I realize my opponents are not against traditional institutions like marriage or long-term relationships, and as something of an activist myself, I certainly do not want to argue in favor of tradition just for the sake of it. My argument is that self-love and self-definition do not provide meaning to your life, do not provide joy to your life, not in the same way that social and familiar interactions do. Legacy is what gives your life meaning, what you are passing on to the next generation, what you are leaving behind to improve the world, how you are contributing to the great and everlasting chain of human history for the better. We are so worried about sacrificing our passions, our dreams, our aspirations for love. I think we stand the very real risk of sacrificing love itself. Just like the woman-in-law I champion, I have shaped a career for myself that allows me to be, and I hope she will agree, a good and devoted parent to a teenager with a future ahead of her that she can take control of, more than I could and more than the generations before me could. Because just like my father, I didn't sacrifice too much for love. I chose love. And going back to my father, was it worth it? I'd say so. His decision not to sacrifice for love, but to choose love, had an impact. Here I am. I've been able to make an impact on the world of work right here in the UK. I've shone the light on female founders and trailblazer legal professionals through both my work in my business and my campaign, First 100 Years. And I'm here speaking to you tonight, joining an all-women debate. So if my father's legacy wasn't about him and the way he defined himself, if it's about the things he left behind when he left this world, then the answer is yes. Choosing love was absolutely worth it. And it was no sacrifice. Thank you.